of military assistance. What does he say to you?
He says that he shares my concern, and he advises me to
I will bump the
express
squid.
that in a very special way to the
Well, I
Secretary of
won't
State.
bump the
Now,
squid
he's
at
the
all.
national security advisor, works directly with the president, but he tells you that you should bring it up with the
Refresh
Secretary of
the page.
State.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever sent a cable like that? How many times in your career of 40,
Hey,
50
Michael.
years have you sent a cable directly to the Secretary of State?
Once.
This time,
Yes, sir.
in 50 years.
Rifle company commanders don't send cables, but yes, sir.
So the national security advisor, who could tell
Look at him laughing
the
about
president
it.
himself, and who shares
Big
your
fucking
concern,
joke.
says you, the ambassador serving in Ukraine,
Hey,
should
look at all the people that
cable
just showed up real
Secretary of
quick.
State directly, and you do so.
Holy
don't you?
moly.
What the
Michael,
cable says,
Tony, Daniel, Connie, Billy,
Classified cable.
Karsten.
without going to classified information.
Without going to classified, it says
Thanks, Jesse.
security assistance. It's what we've been talking about today. Security assistance to Ukraine at this particular time, as in previous times, is very important. Ukraine, I also make the point that we've also talked about here today, Ukraine is important for our national security, and we should support it.
So
Not to provide that would be folly.
did you get an answer to your cable?
Not directly? No, sir.
Do you know what happened to it?
Secretary Kent
Secretary Kent, do you know what happened to it?
tells me that.
Yeah, I was on vacation. I was on vacation when his cable came in, but my understanding is it made it to its recipient, intended recipient, Secretary Pompeo.
And we know Secretary Pompeo was on the call a month earlier on July 25th. It's not like he's in the dark about any of this. What do you do with it?
Hey,
I honestly can't say for sure
Hey, guys.
what happened with
How's
the
it
cable
going?
once the message was brought in at the highest level.
how's it going, everybody?
One other question, gentlemen.
So I
on
wasn't going to
September
watch
1st,
this,
You recall a meeting.
but I had to
between
go
the
somewhere
Vice
this morning,
President and the President of
and
Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky,
I got in my
which
truck,
right
and the
off
radio was
the
on, and this
bat,
was on the
the
fucking
President,
radio.
of
I started
Ukraine
listening
raised
to it,
security assistance.
and they were
And the Vice
dropping
President,
some
according to
bombs,
said,
man. I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to watch it.
You know when the Vice President made that call?
I don't know, sir.
They were dropping some
You know
bombs.
if anything the Vice President had to do with any of this?
It's
what
like,
more can you say about the
oh,
Vice President's role in this? You
oh.
know if he ever raised this issue with
Hey,
anyone in the
Amy.
administration, whether he ever pushed for the release of that security assistance?
I can't, sir.
I believe to the best of my understanding, Vice President was an advocate for the release of the assistance.
Thank you. Yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Demmings,
Mr. Chairman, I have unanimous consent request.
General will state his request.
I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record the political article on Ukraine boosting the Clinton campaign authored by Ken Vogel,
Without
now at the
objection.
New York Times.
That will be entered into the record. Representative Demmings.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to both of you for being with us today. Mr. Kent, you said that a president has the right to remove
Kemper,
an
hey.
ambassador because the ambassador served at the pleasure of the president. Is that correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
Does that removal usually come with the smear campaign of that ambassador by the president?
I think the right of the president to make a decision about the president's personal representative, as confirmed by the Senate, is separate from whatever happens outside the confines of U.S. government processes.
Do you have any idea why it was important to discredit Ambassador Yovanovitch, what she was not willing to do or to do, why that was important?
Well, I guess it probably depends on the motivation of other people, and I'm not one of them.
I'm not one of them.
The committee's investigation has uncovered a web of shadow diplomacy engaged in and executed by several State Department officials and the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and ultimately directed by President Trump. We have heard several ways of describing this shady shadow operation, shadow diplomacy, rogue back channel. Ambassador Taylor, you have described what you encountered as the top diplomat on the ground in Ukraine as a, and I quote, highly irregular, informal channel of U.S. policy. You testified that the channel included Ambassador Volker Sondland, Secretary Perry, and as you later learned, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Both of you have explained that you grew seriously concerned when you realized that the interests of this irregular channel.
Are you guys hearing an echo
diverged from
on the
official
audio?
US policy and interests. Was Mr. Giuliani promoting U.S. national interests or policy in Ukraine, Ambassador?
I don't think so, ma'am.
Mr. Kent?
Is there an echo on the audio, or does it sound
What
clear?
interests do you believe he was promoting, Mr. Kent?
I believe he was looking to dig up political dirt against a potential rival in the next election cycle.
Ambassador Taylor? What interests do you believe he was promoting?
I agree with Mr. Kent.
The State Department's role is to promote U.S. policies overseas, not to help the current president win re-election. Is that correct, Mr. Kent?
All federal government employees are subject to the Hatch Act, and our actions are supposed
It's
to be
okay.
promoting policy and not involved in partisan politics.
Ambassador Taylor?
I agree.
Mike Pence
What is the
2024.
risk of running a separate channel of diplomacy that is completely outside of normal
Sounds good.
channels and does not further U.S.
Okay, good.
policy goals, Ambassador Taylor?
Mr. Demings, it's possible to do one, but not the other. That is, if it's completely against U.S. policy goals, then that's a mistake. Then it's not helpful. You can get advice and even have conversations outside of the normal channels, but then they need to be part of U.S. foreign policy and approaching those goals.
Mr. Kent?
You don't hear any echo? That's good.
Ambassador Taylor, you have described in your previous testimony one instance shortly
I'm
after
gonna
you
go
arrived in
over to the
Ukraine,
orange,
in which
bud.
Ambassador Sondland asked State Department officials
Camp.
not to listen to a July 28th call he had planned to hold with President Zelensky. Did you find that unusual?
I did.
What was the impact of Ambassador Sondland making that request? And you found it unusual. What do you believe the impact was?
Ms. Demings, I'm not sure there was an immediate impact.
Was there
So,
a recording or transcription?
There was not. That was the impact. It was not recorded.
Do you think that's why the request was made, so there would not be
YouTube demonetized my
normal
big
State
channel.
Department of employees from the operations center would have been
Somebody came in the other day and said Tim
transcribing
Pool
and
had done a
taking
thing about
notes?
what YouTube was doing, and I went and I watched the
Norm,
Tim
but,
Pool
it is
video.
also it is not unusual.
And
to
yeah,
not
this
have
is
it
their new
So you know that
rollout,
State
and it
Department is holding
sucks.
your notes and refuses
It's I don't even want to talk
provide
about it.
them
It's
to
just all
Congress
bullshit. You know,
despite
I
a
could
duly
talk about it for an
authorized
hour,
subpoena.
but
And
I'm
we
not
know
going to waste
that
y'all's
in
time
some
because I know y'all don't
instances,
give a
your
fuck.
notes may be the only
You know, if you guys had
documentary
channels and you were
record
putting up
of what
content,
happened.
you know, you're trying to
You
build
are
up fucking
that
followings
as
and
well.
shit like that, then you'd be
And
interested
Mr.
in this
Kent,
shit.
you are
But
aware
I
that
don't
your
have too many
notes have
people
not
like that
been
watching
turned
me.
over to Congress.
So,
I have turned all
yeah,
records that I had in
just
my
if you guys
possession
want to
the State
support me,
Department,
you
because
you
whatever
can
we
go on
do
YouTube,
is
you can watch my
considered a
videos,
federal
and if you
record,
want me to
not a
get
personal record.
some sort of
Thank you so much,
monetary
Mr. Chairman. I
compensation
yield back.
for you enjoying my videos, just join my Patreon. There's plenty of you that do it. I'm making a good
I have a New York Times
amount of money every
op-ed
month from
stating
you guys
why
that
President Obama
that
should
do
have done more
appreciate it.
investing in
And if you
Ukraine
want to
by trio
join
of
in, you can.
ambassadors,
$1 a
which
month is
includes,
as little
William
as you need to
Taylor,
give.
Without objection,
December
that will be
28th,
Or you can do
into the
more
record.
if you appreciate it, man.
Mr.
And
Christmas.
any other live streamer out
afternoon,
there that's
gentlemen.
doing it,
I'd
find their
like to walk you
Patreon and
through a
support them
couple
like
points
that.
raised by my colleagues on
We
the
knew
other
YouTube
side.
was going to do this.
One is they
I've
claim that the
known
July
they've been
25th
doing it to me for
false
years. Just they've
shows
been doing
no
it
evidence of
silently.
pressure
Now
on
they're
the
just coming out
Ukrainian
publicly and saying we're doing it
In
to
fact, they
everybody.
argue the
If you are
Ukrainians
not
did not
literally
feel any
creating
pressure at any time
content for
to
children on
comply
YouTube,
with
your
any
shit's
of
going to get
President Trump's
demonetized,
request for investigation.
most likely.
In fact, Ambassador Taylor, at your deposition,
It needs to
in
be
October,
for children. It is
you
this
stated
whole
that
thing.
due
Like
to
I
the
said, I want to
hold
get
that
into it.
President
But your
Trump
content
placed
literally
on
has to
aid
be
the
made
Ukraine,
for children.
the Ukrainians
That has to be your
became,
target
quote,
audience.
unquote, desperate. Isn't that right?
in
Hey, Jesse.
August,
Thanks,
they
Jim.
did not know, as far as I'm aware, but at the end of August, the article came out in September.
Yeah, it's backwards on the screen. I'm trying to not get
The
copyright,
Minister of Defense,
but the
for
audio
example,
might get me copyright.
Came to me, I would use the word desperate to
Because, you know,
figure out why
YouTube doesn't
the
want
assistance was
America
being held.
to
He
fucking
thought
see these
that
hearings.
Perhaps if he went to Washington to talk to you, to talk to the Secretary of Defense, to talk to the President, he would be able to find out and reassure, provide whatever answer was necessary to have that assistance released.
In fact, my colleagues on the other side suggest that President Zelensky personally did not feel any pressure at any time, and yet later on in September, he finally relented in a conversation with Gordon Sondland, according to your deposition, in which he agreed to make a statement on CNN. Isn't that right?
He had planned to make a statement on CNN, yes, sir.
My colleagues also say that the hold on U.S. security assistance was lifted on September 11th without any investigations happening on the part of the Ukrainians, and therefore everything ended up fine in the end. However, Mr. Kent, as you know, the House Intelligence, Foreign Affairs, and Oversight Committees began this current investigation leading to the proceedings today on September 9th. In fact, it was only 2 days after this particular set of committees began their investigations that the Trump administration eventually released the military aid, correct?
That is a timeline, yes.
Mr. Ambassador Taylor, between the time of your October deposition and now, did anyone from the Trump administration contact you about your appearance before the committee today?
No, sir.
How about you, Mr. Kent?
No, sir.
Ambassador Taylor, I would like to turn to a word that by my count you used 13 times in your opening statement, and that word is concern. You were concerned that aid was being conditioned on political investigations, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
You were concerned that irregular channels of diplomacy were being used in our foreign policy in the Ukraine, right?
Yes, sir.
Ambassador Taylor, can you rule out the possibility that these irregular channels of diplomacy are being used in other countries where we conduct foreign policy?
Apple juice with half the sugar removed. It's good.
I can't. I've not heard of any other separate channel that has this kind of influence. That is the Giuliani kind of guidance.
God, this
But
shit
you
is
can't rule
fucking
it out.
boring. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull it.
And how about you, Mr. Kent? You can't.
I
rule it
have
out
no
either, right?
interest in this
I
right
have no
now.
basis to make it.
So let's go ahead and shut it off. Because I couldn't give a fuck about it. And I figure if I don't give a fuck about it, you guys probably don't give a fuck about it either. Let's get rid of that. Okay, goodbye. Hello, Trendies. Let's do a show. Fuck that impeachment hearing. I was not enjoying that at all. I thought I was going to get into it because earlier there was some explosive shit. But it's gotten so boring. And, I already know that the president is guilty of trying to enrich himself using the presidency. We already know that. I don't need a hearing to tell me that. He already admitted he did it. You know, he admitted it. He told us he was going to do it, and then he did it. He literally said, hey, if China can do it, Ukraine, whoever can research it for me and find out dirt on, you know, Biden for me or whatever, I wouldn't mind getting it. He said that he would do it. So now he's done it. He's broken the law. And he should be impeached for it as far as I'm concerned. Fucking impeach the bastard. You know? And then let's get on with our fucking daily life, please. Let's just get on with life. Whatever happens, happens. What do you guys say? I lost y'all? Did I lose y'all? I lost y'all. Nobody's typing. Nobody's saying anything. Where's my people at? I'm refreshing the page. Hello? Are we live? Are we live? Are we live? Anybody there? Steven says Senate won't. Senate most likely won't. Yeah, Senate most likely won't. I told you that. I'm here making a dab, says Jesse. Are we good? Are we good? We're going to smoke. It's bottom of the hour. No law regarding cannabis. Cheers, everybody. Hey, James. Oh boy, that was good. Wow. Let's see if anybody more exciting is.
A determination.
You don't believe the July 25th call was perfect, did you? Do you?
Was it a perfect call? I love this.
I think some of the language in the call gave cause for concern.
Ambassador Taylor?
I agree.
And what was the cause for concern for you?
Oh, so they disagree that it was a perfect call. Wow, look at his whole fucking cabinet disagrees with him.
There was part of the discussion of the previous ambassador was a cause for concern.
Yeah, I'd say so. Hash. There are some Republican senators that do seem like they would support impeaching the president. But I don't know what the amount has to be. And yeah, I really doubt they're going to get that amount of people, man, to do it. They're bought by industry, man. All of these senators are bought off by industry. In fact, I'm surprised that the Democratic senators are even voting for impeachment. Seriously, they're bought by industry too. They are. And it's got to fucking, they have to do it because they need to keep their voters. They call those people their constituents. That's what the people who support them by voting for them are called their constituents. I know that's a stupid fucking word, but now you know what they mean when they say that. Those are the people who vote for you. And you got to keep those people happy. It's just like Hillary Clinton said, she has a public position and a private position.
Ambassador Taylor, I want to draw on your experience finally as a West Point cadet and as an infantry commander in Vietnam. In a battlefield situation, is a commanding officer allowed to hold up action, placing his troops at risk until someone provides him a personal benefit?
No, sir.
Is that because if commanding officers did that, they would be betraying their responsibility to the nation and the men and women under their command?
That's a
Yes, sir.
And if that happened and were found out, could that person be subject to discipline?
Yes, sir.
Could that type of conduct trigger a court-martial?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I yield back.
Wow, that was actually a good set of
Chairman.
questions.
I thank the gentleman.
Mr. Chairman, let's have unanimous.
What purpose does the gentleman seek?
I thank the chairman. I have unanimous consent, ask unanimous consent to enter into the record Mr. Mulvaney's statement where he said there's absolutely no quid pro quo from October 17th, 2019.
Without objection. Mr. Nunes, you're recognized for any closing comments you'd like to make.
Mr. Chairman.
I've recognized Mr. Nunes for his comments. Mr. Conaway, we will get your motion.
Okay.
After Mr. Nunes' brief closing remarks and my brief closing remarks, it's My intention to excuse the witnesses.
Hey, my evil
We'll
laugh.
have a very brief recess. Members should not go far. We will resume and take up Mr. Conaway's motion. Mr. Nunes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just be brief. I want to reiterate what I said earlier, and that is that we really should stop holding these hearings until we get the answer to three important topics.
Okay.
The first being the full extent of the Democrats' prior coordination with the whistleblower, and who did the whistleblower coordinate with?
What?
Second, the full extent of Ukraine's election meddling against the Trump campaign. And third, why did Burisma hire Hunter Biden, and what did he do for them? And did his position affect any government
What's that got to do with
actions,
what
US
Donald
government
Trump
actions
did,
under
you
the
fucking
Obama
idiot? It's got nothing to do with this.
You are not allowing
Hunter
those
Biden isn't the president of the
witnesses
United
to,
States, you fucking idiot.
appear before
This
the
guy's a
committee,
moron.
which I think
They're going to go,
is a
boom,
problem.
all right, shut up,
So
go
we'll
away.
expect, hopefully, you will allow us to bring in the whistleblower, the folks that he spoke to, and also numerous Democratic
These are the
operatives
people that
who
control our country, everybody.
worked with Ukraine
This
to
guy
meddle
is
in
the
the
leader
election.
of the intelligence
With that, I'll yield back.
committee. The leader of the intelligence
gentlemen.
community.
I want to thank the
about
witnesses
that.
for their testimony today, for your decades of service to the country.
That's our leader.
I think you exemplify
Intelligence.
so many courageous men and women who serve in the diplomatic corps, who served in our military, who represent the United States so well around
Fucking
the world.
idiots.
I appreciate
We shouldn't
how
have this
you
because
endeavor
Hunter
to
Biden made
stay out of the
$80,000 a
fray,
month
to
working
relate
for the Ukraine.
what you
So
heard, what you
because
saw,
Hunter Biden did that,
without, additional
it's
commentary.
okay that Trump was
That
looking
is as
into
it
it
should
with
be.
another country. It's
You
okay
were
that he was
both
breaking the
compelled
law
to appear, and
to
we
look
are
into
grateful
it.
that
Didn't
you
go to the
answered,
FBI.
the
Didn't go to
lawful
his
subpoenas
people.
that you received.
Didn't go to that guy, that his intelligence leader.
The story
No, he
that
went to
you,
another country.
have shared
He
with us
broke
today,
our law.
Your
That's-
experiences,
That's
I
what he
think, is a
did.
very deeply troubling.
He's a fucking
one.
idiot. The man is,
It is
the
the
president of the
story
United States is a
of
fucking
a
idiot.
Dedicated ambassador, someone who served with great distinction. Ambassador Yovanovitch, who was the subject of a vicious smear campaign at the beginning of the year. It is
Alexei.
the story of once this ambassador was pushed out of the way, the creation of a irregular channel, which, Ambassador Taylor, you described, went all the way from the president through Mick Mulvaney, through Ambassador Sondland, through Ambassador Volker, to Rudy Giuliani. That over time became apparent was not serving the U.S. interest, but running deeply contrary to the U.S. interest, was in fact conditioning a White House meeting that the President of Ukraine desperately sought to establish himself as the new President of Ukraine and to demonstrate to friend and foe alike that he had a relationship with his most powerful patron, the United States of America.
It's a nice fucking chair.
And
I'd like to have that chair.
conditioned $400 million of bipartisan taxpayer-funded military support for a nation at war on the front lines of Russian expansionism. A suspension of which was not in the U.S. interest, not in Ukraine's interest, not in our national security interest in no way, shape, or form. You've described a situation in which those in the service of the president made it clear to the Ukrainians they need to publicly announce these investigations or they weren't going to get that meeting, and they sure weren't going to get that military assistance. Now, I would point out, and this may not have come to your attention, but it certainly came to our attention. On September 9th, the Inspector General informed our committee that the Director of National Intelligence was withholding a whistleblower complaint in violation of the statute. By that point, on September 9th, that complaint had made its way to the White House. On September 9th, when the Inspector General informed Congress that that complaint had been withheld, the White House also learned that Congress now inevitably would learn about the complaint. It was less than 48 hours later that the military aid would be released. Over the weeks to come, or over the days to come, rather, we will hear from other dedicated public servants about other aspects of this effort to invite foreign interference in our election, to condition a White House meeting and military aid for the performance of political favors for the president's reelection campaign. We will hear from other witnesses. I appreciate members on both sides of the aisle who I think participated today in a serious way and in a civil way. This is as it should be. There is no shortage of strong feelings about what this means to the country. At the end of the day, we're going to have to decide, based on the evidence that you and others provide, whether we're prepared to accept in the President of the United States a situation where the President, for their own personal or political benefit, can condition military aid, diplomatic meetings, or any other performance of an official act in order to get help in their reelection. Whether we will need to accept in this president or any future president the idea that the President of the United States is going to invite a foreign country to intervene in our affairs. These are the decisions we will have to make when we have to decide whether this president should be impeached. But I want to thank you again.
That does.
Just conclude by saying, because I can't let it go unanswered, some of my colleagues made the statement repeatedly that I've met with the whistleblower, that I know who the whistleblower is. It was false the first time they said it. It was false the second through 40th time they said it. It will be false the last time they say it. With that, this concludes this portion of the hearing. I want to thank you, gentlemen. I ask everyone to remain in their seats. The witnesses are excused. Please allow them to leave the committee room. We will, once they leave the committee room, take a brief recess, and then we will resume to take up Mr. Conaway's motion. And once again, I thank you, gentlemen.
The first public impeachment hearing now on a short break. Welcome to our special coverage. I'm Jake Tapper in Washington. The first two witnesses, Bill Taylor and George Kent, have now concluded, top officials describing their knowledge of an alarming quid pro quo that everything, a White House meeting and badly needed security assistance to Ukraine, everything was conditioned on Ukraine publicly announcing investigations that would benefit President Trump politically, including one into the Bidens. Let's get our big picture response from our panel. Jeffrey Toobin, let me start with you. What did you think? What was important?
Let's go tubing with Jeffrey Toobin.
The story of how this chapter has unfolded has been largely known for some time, but there was one important new development today, which was Ambassador Taylor testified that one of his aides was present when Ambassador Sondland, who was a key figure in all of this, had a conversation with the president on July 26th, the day after his now infamous phone call with the president of Ukraine, where he said, and this person who will testify next week or Friday, who will give a deposition on Friday, said he overheard the president talking about investigations, and then Sondland said to this group, this dinner table in Kiev, that the president cares more about investigations of Biden, of the 2016 campaign, than he does about anything else relating to Ukraine. Wow. That's important because the one criticism of these two witnesses, which I think is very much legitimate, it's not really a criticism, it's just a factual statement, is that neither of them had direct contact with the president.
Ever.
And you know, that's a problem if you're going to impeach the president.
Although we should point out that people that have had firsthand contact with the president, the White House has prevented them from testifying,
True enough.
Including Mick Mulvaney.
But Sondland,
right,
who is emerging as an absolutely key witness who will testify in public next week, he did have contact with the president. And so one more disclosure of one more statement by the president that he didn't care about Ukraine except as a source of campaign dirt, that's significant, and I think that's the news of the day.
And David Urban, what was your response? We saw Republicans, a lot of Republicans talking about the aid went through, so none of this matters. Neither of you spoke with Trump, to the two witnesses, so none of this matters. Nunes, obviously, the ranking Republican on the committee, saying we need to talk to the whistleblower. That's the most important. What did you think?
But listen, I think it was very important that Ambassador Taylor emphasized over and over again that the Ukrainians had no knowledge at the time of the call that the aid was being withheld, that they didn't know until after the Politico story had run that aid was being withheld. I think also very important, this is political theater. Let's not forget that, right? This is all about politics. This isn't a court of law. This is about politics. And did today move the needle in anybody's opinion? Did anybody sitting at home in their living rooms, kitchens, wherever they're watching this, now have a different opinion than they did before this? I think the answer is no. I think this is, unfortunately, it's going to fall flat for Democrats, just as the Mueller hearing did. You know, there's the big promise, just wait till the next hearing. Now we're going to hear from Holmes. Today was going to be good, but we're going to hear from...
I have a feeling this whole impeachment thing is going to all be forgotten by the time the election rolls around. People aren't going to be thinking about this. We've got very short attention spans. I'm not interested in it right now. I'm like, okay, I've heard enough. Man, and they think that the Democrats think that voters are going to be thinking about this in 2020. Man, they better run a lot of ads reminding people about it. Remember, the president almost got impeached. So vote for us, because the president almost got impeached. This is the way I see it, though. This is what's crazy, is this hearing is literally proving that Donald Trump broke the law. He did. Okay, Donald Trump broke the law. He'd been doing it for a while. It's a whole conspiracy. There was a whole scam. A bunch of people knew about it, and they're all testifying to that fact. There's literally senators, Republican senators right now, that are watching this hearing that have to consider that. They have to consider it. And, you know, if the voting public watches this, and as a whole, the American people are convinced that Donald Trump did break the law and really does deserve to be impeached, and even Republicans agree, those senators are going to have a lot of weight on their shoulders trying to make up their minds to support this or to not support it. And I'm telling you, that makes it interesting as fuck, because they have to look America in the face after this, and if they go against this impeachment thing, they have to look America in the face and say, I know our president broke the law, but I'm willing to just look the other way. These are the people at the highest levels of our government, and that's crazy, you know? I mean, I'm surprised they're not bringing up the points that were made. Hey, the president broke the law. Let's see if they mention that.
Obviously, on the Republican side, want to stay there. But listen, I think if you're a Democrat, keep hammering that point home about what this president did on that phone call and throughout. I thought in Taylor's testimony here, he really laid out what he saw essentially from about mid-June when he takes this post at Mike Pompeo's recommendation and suggestion up until about mid-September. All of the things that happened in terms of him coming to find out about these two different tracks of foreign policy, one regular and one highly irregular and unprecedented, right? I mean, he testified that this is something he'd never seen before.
And the under questioning from Val Demings, I think a former police chief from Florida, a Democratic congresswoman, basically George Kent and then Bill Taylor agreed with the sentiment. What was Rudy Giuliani doing? Was he carrying out the interests of the United States? And George Kent said, no, he was trying to dig up dirt on the Bidens, and Bill Taylor agreed with that. Michael Gerhardt, you're an impeachment attorney, an interesting specialty. Let me ask you.
I hope that's helping a little bit.
How did this go in terms of the case the Democrats are clearly trying to build in favor of impeachment? Was it a devastating day, or was it mixed? What did you think?
The first thing that strikes me in hearing the proceeding today is that the framers vested the House and the Senate with the authority over impeachment because they thought that the members of Congress would be more sophisticated than typical jurors. So it doesn't really matter whether evidence is hearsay or anything else. The framers' assumption was members of Congress would be sophisticated enough to be able to put the evidence together. And the second thing that strikes me is a lot of what we didn't hear
That's what I just said.
is really significant. As already been pointed out, but it probably can't be stressed enough. There are a lot of people that are not being allowed to testify. A lot of people, there have been numerous subpoenas that have been not.
Right. Yeah. He's busted for breaking the law, man. And that's the thing about these hearings, it's good, is that even if you support the man, you have to be able to at least admit that he broke the law. And be like, that's fucked up. He shouldn't have done that. That was for his own benefit. And as I said yesterday, and I meant it, Donald Trump, he doesn't have to worry about this. All he has to do is keep doing what he's doing, keep working on being president of the United States, and he'd be reelected. But this, it's gonna catch him in a thing he won't be able to get out of. You know, it's sucking him in. And he's letting it suck him in, and he should just walk away from it. That's all he has to do is walk away from it. Man, I wonder if he's on Twitter right now tweeting. Let's see. That would be so funny if he's literally on Twitter right now, fucking firing off tweets. Donald Trump, read the transcript. Donald Trump tweeted that 7 hours ago. Let's see what else we got. He's only following 47 people. Donald Trump 4 hours ago. 3 hours ago. Democrats ask star witness about alleged quid pro quos. Admits he has no first-hand knowledge of the issue. Yet another flop from the Dems.
The fact of the matter, as you understood it, is that security assistance and the White House meeting were not going to be provided unless Ukraine initiated these two investigations that would benefit Donald Trump's reelection. Is that what you understood the facts to be?
Mr. Goldman, what I can do here for you today is tell you what I heard from people. And in this case, it was what I heard from Ambassador Sondland. He described conditions for the security assistance and the White House meeting in those terms. That is, that were dependent upon, conditioned on pursuing these investigations.
And you heard that from Ambassador Sondland himself, correct?
Correct.
And you also heard a similar story from Mr. Morrison as well, is that right?
Who also talked to Ambassador Sondland about the conversations that he had had in Warsaw with Ukrainians.
And what Mr. Morrison recounted to you was substantially similar to what Mr. Sondland recounted to you, right?
Yes.
Wow, well, that seems pretty goddamn damning to me. Just the fact that he got it from somebody else. These two guys are just talking, man, you know? It's not like he's trying to spin it for this guy. They're just having a conversation. They say their star witness knows nothing. This is funny.
President?
That's correct.
He had 3 meetings again with Zelensky and it didn't come up.
And 2 of those they had never heard about as far as I know.
And President
There was no reason for it.
President Zelensky never made an announcement. This is what I can't believe, and you're their star witness. Ambassador, you weren't on the call, were you? President, you didn't listen on President Trump's call and President Zelensky's call?
I did not.
You've never talked with Chief of Staff Mulvaney?
I never did.
You never met the President?
That's correct.
You had 3 meetings again with Zelensky and it didn't come up.
And 2 of those they had never heard about as far as I know.
And President...
they have all these little clips out of the impeachment where they're like, look, it's a big circus. It's all, look at this. Listen to what he said here in this 30-second clip. Listen to what he said here in this 30-second clip. Or you could sit and watch it for a few minutes and listen to the extent of what they're saying. I wonder what other people are saying about this right now. This is what Donald Trump is saying. I wonder what other people are saying. Let's go find out. Let's move over here to the Twitter sphere and see what kind of hashtags we got going on. Huh. I don't know, the screen kind of looks different. My hashtags aren't appearing for some reason. I don't know why. Just read the transcript. Donald Trump keeps saying that over and over again. Why does it have the times on these? That's so stupid. He says that DACA recipients with arrest records are 53,792. That is a very large proportion of the total at Lou Dobbs. He's such a dick. He's like, but we'll be able to work out a deal with the Dems. He's such a fucking douchebag. God.
Mike Conaway on the House Intelligence Committee, who was trying to get, I believe, the whistleblower to come before the committee.
But the vote, I think,
the vote. No, I'll explain the vote in a second. But that's what the larger issue was. And the Democrats said we want to table this motion that would force the intelligence community whistleblower to come and testify before the committee. And Republicans voted no, and Democrats voted yes, because the Democrats wanted to table this vote. So there were 13 ayes, Democrats voting to table the motion, 9 noes, Republicans voting because they wanted to vote on and they wanted to bring the whistleblower forward. That's just what happened, and then we've adjourned for the rest of the day. Let's go back to what we were talking about, because there's something that was interesting, I thought, is the degree to which Republicans are talking about the whistleblower and focusing on, we need to bring the whistleblower forward because this is all, I think the general argument from Nunes, which is contradicted by many, many witnesses, but the general argument is this is all just made up.
And Peter Welch had the line of the day, perhaps, when he said, no, this all started when with Donald Trump, so we can bring him in to testify, which was a light moment needed. I think the whistleblower has become the recent focus of Republicans on the committee as they're searching for a strategy in this situation. As we all know, and you've been reporting on, there are countless people who have testified who are closer to this than the whistleblower who have confirmed the details. The whistleblower is irrelevant at the...
Thank you. Fucking, they got nothing. Those Republicans got nothing. They need to just let that shit go. Quit going after the person who brought it up. I mean, the president did something wrong. He said he was going to do something wrong. He literally was publicly said, well, if another country had information about a political opponent of mine, I think I would get that information. I think maybe you would tell the FBI, maybe I wouldn't, or whatever the fuck he said. He fucking said he would do it. Then when he does it, the Republicans are trying to be like, no, he didn't do it. I mean, it's fucking insanity. It's insanity. Just admit the man broke the law. I'm so sick of people denying facts. Everybody should be aware of what this entails. People denying facts, and it should sicken you. It's just fucking, it's psychotic.
It is not an illegitimate thing to get all the information that's relevant. However, if they are using it simply to vilify him and to endanger his life as the person who started that, that's not a legitimate concern. And, you know, I'm not a mind reader. I can't tell what the true motivations are of the Republicans, whether it's, you know, a political motive to, you know, just demonize this guy or to get more evidence. That's a question people can decide for themselves.
And David Urban, let me ask you, because I thought it was really interesting. There were two Republicans that made arguments with the witnesses that basically were, you know, solid Republican arguments, but also bolstered the credibility of the witnesses. One was Congresswoman Stefanik, who basically pointed out that George Kent had raised objections, appearance of conflict of interest and impropriety with Hunter Biden being on that board, and she got all that on the record. And then Congressman Weinstrup, who got Bill Taylor to point out, hey, isn't it great that Trump is the one that actually got lethal military aid to the Ukrainians, and President Obama never did. Meanwhile, other House Republicans and the White House and the GOP are attacking these two witnesses.
Look, I don't think you can attack the veracity of Bill Taylor, right? Clearly, you know, combat veteran, West Point graduate, patriot. Same with George Kent. They're both doing, I think, what they believe is their duty. The problem is, it's their opinions. They're giving their opinions here. They're not giving feelings aren't facts. They're telling you their feelings on these items, not the facts. We want to hear from David Holmes. I'm surprised he was one of the first witnesses called. You want to open big. Here's a guy who has alleged firsthand knowledge and firsthand witnessing of the call. But yet...
The call between Trump and
July 26th, the call occurs. We don't even hear about the guy until last week. Why didn't he complain to somebody?
I don't think it's fair to say they just testified about their feelings. I mean, they testified about what happened with the story of American aid to Ukraine
as
and
they
why.
Heard it told to them.
Well, but they were key players in that story.
But they're still, as they reacted to the parts that were told to them by others.
Okay.
They weren't a participant in any of this. They were being told, hey, this is what I heard. No, but Jeffrey, they weren't firsthand participants. They were reacting to things that were told to them by others.
I think, David, though, what you're discounting here is that they combined have about 80 years of experience in public service. And much of those at that time is working on issues like Ukraine and Europe. They know when something smells funny. They tracked and they wrote detailed notes of events that happened, calls that happened, conversations that happened. That's hardly feelings. They're reporting out the details as they're happening, which is an important part of the story. It's not just the one call.
They never met the president, never talked to the president about Ukraine policy. They never. I mean, it's hard to get in the mind. They're saying, I think the president wanted this or wanted that.
So David, do you think that the Republicans should call John Bolton and Mick Mulvaney because they had conversations with the president? I mean, do you think that would change what?
Listen, we're going to take a quick break. I'll get your answer to your question. We're going to bring in Jim Jordan, House Republican from Ohio. Let's listen into what he has to say.
It's a sad episode for the country, but like we said in the hearing today, 4 facts will never change. The transcript speaks for itself. There was no conditionality, no quid pro quo in the transcript. The 2 guys on the call have both been very clear. No pressure, no pushing, no linkage to investigations.
What a fucking liar, man! This is fucking crazy. That guy is fucking insane,
President Zelensky
man.
didn't pledge to do any investigations prior to the aid being released.
This should outrage you guys. You guys should all be outraged by this guy.
Their first 2 witnesses. Neither one of them's ever talked to the president, talked to Chief of Staff Mulvaney, or talked with Mayor Giuliani. And as I said with Ambassador Taylor, he had 3 meetings with President Zelensky, and all 3 of those meetings never once did this idea of linking security assistance dollars to an investigation ever come up. And of course, we know what President Zelensky said: no pledge, no promise, no starting of any investigations prior to the aid being released. So, again, I think this is a sad chapter for the country, but frankly, a good day for the facts and a good day for the President of the United States. I want to turn over to Ms. Stefanik.
Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. This was Adam Schiff's first opportunity in front of the public. These hearings have been conducted in a basement bunker, part of his regime of secrecy, and this was an abject failure for the Democrats and for Adam Schiff. Number one, he still refuses to hear from the whistleblower, which started off this whole process. Number two, in less than 20 minutes, Adam Schiff interrupted Republicans' questions. So we want to make sure that all members are able to ask questions. That includes Republican members. This is a continuation of his conduct in closed-door meetings. And as Jim Jordan mentioned, the key facts here are as follows. One, Ukraine got the aid. Two, there was no investigation into the Bidens. Those facts speak for themselves, and I'm proud of our members for making sure that those facts were clear for the American public. I'll turn it back over.
Yeah, two of those things don't mean shit.
Take a couple questions.
What about
the president still broke the law. It doesn't matter what the result was.
The idea that there's
doesn't matter that they finally got the aid.
Murder, attempted burglary, and even if something was attempted, even if there was no deliverable, isn't that relevant still if something was
right?
Chad, look, Ukraine's one, as Ernst & Young said, one of the 3 most corrupt countries on the planet. President Trump and our administration, or his administration, was checking him out.
He's not answering the question.
And guess what? After Vice President Pence
You're
visited
not
with Mr. Zelensky,
question.
after Senators bipartisan, Senators Johnson and Murphy visited with President Zelensky, 6 days later the aid is released because they all became convinced this is a guy worth sending the hard-earned tax dollars of the American people to. That is clear from the record. Never once in this 55-day time
if I ever met this guy in person,
did President Zelensky announce that he was going to start any type of investigation into Burisma or Biden. Never once. And yet the aid got released. So the facts are the facts. You guys can talk about all you want, and the Democrats can do all they want. But the facts will not change.
Just
and I think the American people clearly see that.
You're wrong. What the fuck, dude? What are you, 3 years old?
Not secondhand. Sondland talked to Yarmak, and then Yarmak and Sondland have a conversation. Then Sondland talks to Morrison, and then Morrison talks to Taylor, and this all happens in Warsaw, where Vice President Pence is meeting with President Zelensky, and nothing happens there. That's unbelievable.
To finish the question, the White House has been blocking some of the first-hand witnesses from actually coming and participating in this inquiry from responding to requests to testify.
And these are close advisors of the president.
Should they be coming?
Well, that's a long tradition in our country and press in our country. These are close advisors to the president. And there's a court case. We'll see. I think it's December 10th. They're going to rule on the Bolton motion. So we'll find out then.
So you do not believe his testimony that Gordon Sondland made clear that after his conversation with President Trump that everything was contingent on announcing his investigations. Are you just simply saying you don't believe what
I understand the facts. As Ms. Stefanik just said, as we said in the committee, I understand the facts, and the facts are squarely, strongly on the president's side, and I think, again, the American people see that.
We talked to Gordon Sondland, who talks to the president.
Dude, I hope you guys can fucking see the actual facts, and not what this motherfucker wants you to believe. This guy's a maniac. He's insane.
Well, I want to hear from, in the whistleblower's complaint, bullet point number 1, he says this: over the past 4 months, I have talked to more than half a dozen U.S. officials. I want to hear from the whistleblower and those officials that he or she talked to. I want to hear from those individuals.
Why not ask the White House? Why not the White House?
Again, that's their call. These are close advisors to the president. The
You better
law
hope he
history of our
doesn't get
country
what
is
he's
they don't have to
asking for,
testify.
man. There's going to be more nails in the coffin.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the court says on Bolton and Mulvaney. Yeah. That's up to them. That's up to them.
And
Thank you.
You feel, though, just because there are alleged associations, the whistleblower with a Democratic politician, a prominent Democrat, that biases that person inherently? Is that part of your?
All I've ever said is there's one member of Congress who knows who the whistleblower is, and one member of Congress whose staff has met with the whistleblower, and that's Adam Schiff. It hadn't happened to anyone else.
Is it okay for the president to ask for an investigation into the Bidens from the Ukrainians? Is that okay?
I think what should happen is the whistleblower should testify. All we asked for today with our motion was to depose the whistleblower.
How was day one on the Intel Committee? Did you have fun?
That's Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, Republican, on the committee, just named to the committee. And you heard a reporter there trying to get him to answer the question, is it okay for the president to try to get a foreign country, in this case Ukraine, to investigate his political rivals? In this case, the Bidens, and Congressman Jordan refused to answer the question.
Right, I said he wouldn't answer the question.
It's a question, rather, that many Republican members of the House and Senate have refused to answer altogether. Mike Gerhardt, I want to go to you because when Congressman Jordan was talking, you said that's not right. He was saying something not correct. What was he saying?
He was saying it's a long tradition in our country of having people working in or near the White House or in administration not testifying. That's just completely not true. And the fact is, there's no privilege under our Constitution and in our law that prevents people from talking about or disclosing criminal activity or abuse of power. So no privilege is going to protect somebody from reporting that, especially if they were witness to it, if they heard it.
All right, good point of
But
clarification.
that's assuming criminal activity or abuse of power.
Or abuse of power, which is, of course, but it's, of course, what this is about. But we have the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, is about to speak right now. Let's listen in.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make a few observations about the hearing today. First of all, I want to thank these incredible public servants for their testimony, for their decades of experience. I think between the two of them, they have half a century to a century of experience in serving the country in war as well as in peace. I thought their testimony very powerful. Obviously, these are two very credible witnesses who speak from the heart and who have the greatest dedication not only to the United States, but the deepest care for Ukraine, a deep and abiding interest in Ukraine and its future and its prospects. The portrait that I think their testimony paints is one of an irregular channel that ran from the president through Mick Mulvaney, Ambassador Sondland, Ambassador Volker, on down to Rudy Giuliani, in which the president sought to advance his political and personal interests at the expense of United States national security. And the president did that by pressing this vulnerable ally to get involved in the next presidential election in a way that the president thought would advance his re-election prospects. Did so by inviting Zelensky to do these political investigations, and more than that, did so by conditioning a White House meeting as well as ultimately hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid needed by this ally. Now, a couple points on the White House meeting and on the military aid. This was a new and politically inexperienced president of Ukraine with a lot of promise, who ran a campaign based on ending the conflict in Ukraine with the Russians, but also fighting corruption. It was, I think, a euphoric time for Ukrainians to have this reformer as their president. It was important, as we heard today, that this new president could demonstrate to friend and foe alike, to both his own countrymen, but also to his adversary, the Russians, that he had a strong relationship with the President of the United States. A White House meeting is one of the best ways to demonstrate that. And so this is something Zelensky clearly wanted and came back to time after time, and his people came back time after time. When are we going to get that meeting? When are we going to schedule that meeting that you said we would get? And time again, the answer came back. We first want you to commit to these political investigations to help the president's re-election campaign, and we want you to do it publicly. And then we would learn, as they learned and as they testified, that not only was this meeting conditioned, but also this military aid at a time when Ukrainians were dying every week. And so we will hear other witnesses, I think, who will corroborate much of what you heard today. Today allowed you to hear from Ukraine, from Ambassador Taylor's perspective, and from the view from Washington, from Mr. Kent's perspective. Other witnesses will fill in some of the pieces before, after, and during. But we don't expect the facts are largely going to be contested. There wasn't much of an effort by the Republicans today to contest these facts.
Trump's behind in every single poll, dude.
Ultimately, what we will need to decide, and what I hope members on both sides of the aisle in the House, and if necessary in the Senate, what I hope members will think about is,
look at the polls, bro.
What do these facts mean for the future of our country? What do these facts mean in terms of what Americans should expect from a president of the United States? Are we prepared to say that asking a foreign nation now to intervene in our elections is something that is a perk of the office of the presidency? Are we prepared to say that conditioning taxpayer-funded military assistance to an ally that is fighting a fight in which we have a deep stake is also now a perk of the office of the presidency? Are we now going to say that other official acts can be conditioned on another country giving something of value to the President of the United States? Is just now going to be the new normal for the President of the United States? I don't think we can allow that to be the new normal, acceptable in any way, shape, or form, or it will not only permit this president to seek other ways to bring about interference in our election, but it will invite future presidents to do the same. So we have some very difficult questions to answer at the end of the day about what these facts require us to do.
Those polls were
but
wrong.
you will be hearing shortly from other witnesses who I think will corroborate much of what you heard today. And with that, I'm happy to answer a couple questions.
Mr. Chairman, what did you make of the new information today that he presented to the committee that Mr. Taylor's aide overheard this phone call with Gordon Sondland?
I think your biggest problem right now
Gordon Sondland, when he testified,
is every poll has Trump behind, every single poll.
Well, first of all, in terms of the new information that Ambassador Taylor gave today about this conversation, the day after President Trump is on the phone with President Zelensky, in which one of Ambassador Taylor's staff is overhearing a conversation between Sondland and the president, and the president is speaking loud enough where he can hear part of the conversation, and the president is interested in whether the Ukrainians are going to do the investigation, and Sondland assures him that they are. This is very obviously...
Right now, the polls say almost anybody who has a chance in the Democratic convention, anybody, is beating Trump. Even Biden, they're all beating Trump.
In an effort to protect the president. But what this call indicates, as other testimony has likewise indicated, is that the instructions are coming from the president on down. Mick Mulvaney made that abundantly clear in his press conference.
Kush Cash, are you one of those people you don't think Donald Trump broke the law? You don't think he broke the law?
When Taylor testified,
it's hilarious. Are you watching the hearings?
He wanted Sondland to push back on Trump's demand for these investigations. That is not asking Sondland to change his view. It's asking Sondland to help change the president's view, the president's demand. And so I think this witness is potentially very important. And of course, we are moving to depose this witness, and we have already scheduled their deposition.
It's broke the fucking law. I mean, it's admitted broke the fucking law.
Look, I'm reserving judgment on the ultimate
you know what?
questions
Go away,
once the
dude. You're a
testimony is
fucking idiot.
complete. About
You're blocked.
what should
Go
follow
fuck
from
off.
this. What are the consequences?
Biden is the
It
real
is certainly the
criminal here.
case that
Yeah, Biden fucking did some shady shit.
the founders
you know
were
what?
deeply
Biden's not
concerned
president of the
that
United
a
States,
president
you
of the United
fucking
States
idiot.
one day may be elected to
The
office.
president's the one that just
that
broke
would
the
put
law.
his or her interests above the country, that would
And
sacrifice
if the president
our
was
national
smart,
security,
he would have
either to
investigated
get a
Biden with the
political,
FBI.
personal favor,
But your boy wasn't
or
smart enough
to
to
some
fucking do it.
foreign
So get the
influence.
fuck out of here.
So the
You
facts that have
fucking
come
kiss
to
ass.
light are very
Fucking
much
got
what the
your tongue
founders
on
had in
Donald Trump's
mind,
team.
I think, when they provided a remedy. So we're going to have to make that decision. I'm not
Drinking the
prejudging
orange
it.
Kool-Aid.
The only thing I'll say, because I didn't answer the second part of your question, Manu, in terms of Ambassador Sondland, one of the reasons
you guys,
why we
you're
want
welcome
to do these
for me
hearings now
blocking
in
that
public,
guy. You're
having
welcome.
done the deposition in closed session, is we want the American people to be able to evaluate the credibility of the witnesses for themselves, and I'm confident that they will. Thank you.
Why move to table?
As the chairman of the
No
House
one else is
Intelligence
gonna
Committee,
talk. He's not
Adam
gonna
Schiff,
take any
Democrat of
questions.
California, we're going to squeeze in a quick break. We're going to
Wow,
have
he
much
didn't take a
more
single
of our
question. What a
coverage of this
dick.
momentous day, the first day of public impeachment inquiry hearings. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
His eyes are bloodshot. It's funny. Wonder what's up with that. Bloodshot eyes.
Impeachment inquiry hearings for President Trump. Let's chew over all this. We are awaiting President Trump and Turkish President Erdogan taking questions, and we'll go to that live.
Oh, Donald Trump's going to take
there was a
live
point you were
questions?
making, because Jim Jordan had talked about, Congressman Jim Jordan, the Republican, had been asked, well, if you're criticizing all these people for secondhand information, these two witnesses, what about bringing in the people with firsthand information? And he said, well, there's a tradition of that not happening because of executive privilege. And you said that's not necessarily correct.
I want to give you one great historical example where somebody came in and had to talk about the president. That was President Nixon's White House counsel, John Dean. Nixon's White House counsel office had one person in it, John Dean. John Dean came in and he testified in front of Congress, and that became very significant testimony. And one reason why he was able to do that is because he was testifying about things that were not lawful. And that's what we've heard John Bolton call this a drug deal. We've also...
John Bolton called it a drug deal. Yeah, I want to see Trump take live questions too, man. That'd be fucking... Oh, here's Baldy again. What's he going to say?
We saw it in the Clinton administration during Whitewater, Monica Lewinsky, the Bush administration, Obama administration on Fast and Furious. So to somehow to say doesn't exist.
But what about people that are no longer in the White House, for instance, such as John Bolton? That's a question Nia had asked you before. Would you support John Bolton?
It's a question, and there's a legitimate separation of powers issue, I think, that needs to be resolved by the courts. I do believe that. I believe it's absolutely true. I've come on here, before when the president was trying to get this emergency executive order for spending, I opposed it. I thought it was a bad idea because of separation of powers. I do believe, you may not think so, but I think the court is the ultimate arbiter of this, and the court will determine.
Remember, too, and this came up in the testimony today, not only has the president refused to allow witnesses to testify, but all the documents, all the underlying emails, memos, all the, how government works is largely on paper or, through electronic transmission. And as we learned today, they've turned over none of that.
Yeah, but that's exactly...
That's not...
but Jeff, did it happen in Fast and Furious?
No, they turned over some... Of course they did. They didn't turn over everything you wanted in that totally manufactured and fake scandal. Okay. But then... there was a dispute. But here they've turned over nothing.
Totally manufactured and fake scandal? That wasn't manufactured and fake. What a fucking douchebag. Jeffrey Toobin's a fucking liar.
So
Absolutely zero.
So let me ask you a question, Jen Psaki, as a Democrat on the panel. Do you think that the Democrats achieved what they needed to achieve today?
I do, in part because I think Adam Schiff is exactly the person who should be leading this testimony and leading these hearings at this point in time. He tried to conduct it with a somber note, with a serious note, and what I heard from him in his closing remarks during that press conference is really important. He was taking this beyond Trump. It's not just about removing Trump from office. It's not just about Democrats disliking Trump. It's about the precedent we're setting for the future. And he was very clear on that by saying that, we don't want to set the precedent that in the future, any president should be able to get political dirt on their opponent. They should be able to use their office for political gain. And that's the question for the public. He's trying to pose this question to the public that they're ultimately going to need to decide on. And it's not just about...
What about Speaker Pelosi's statement in May where she said, we're not going to go to impeachment unless we have clear and overwhelming bipartisan support because it's so divisive?
David,
what about that?
David, I was not an advocate for moving for impeachment. Neither were the national security Democrats who came forward in the Washington Post op-ed. The Ukraine situation changed the dynamic and changed the views of Democrats in Congress. What about her statement? What about that statement that she made saying that unless there's clear and overwhelming support, bipartisan support, I'm not going to move forward because it's so divisive? What about that?
Well, there is. I mean, if you look at polling...
No, come on. No bipartisan support in Congress. I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi's
but listen, there is growing support in the public.
Not in Congress.
Overwhelming support
I think,
for the hearing.
David, this isn't the easiest thing, honestly, for the Democrats to do because there's not a clear path for 20 Republicans to come on board for impeachment. They're doing it because they feel they can't not do it.
What about
that they have to move forward with this process.
What do we say
I'm answering your question.
But David, let me ask you, do you think it's okay for any White House, any politician, to use whatever pressure they have, even if it's just, phrased as a polite question, to ask a foreign government to publicly announce an investigation of a political rival?
No, I look at this and say the president was, again, the long conversation was held with the president and President Zelensky were primarily based on the server notion, right? The
CrowdStrike scandal,
primarily based on there. Zelensky raises the Biden stuff. They talk about it briefly. Zelensky said, I didn't feel pressured by it. So the notion that somehow there's pressure...
Answer the fucking question, you bald fat.
Do you think it's okay?
I don't think it's a great... No, I would have preferred the president wouldn't have said those things.
I would have preferred he would have said it.
CrowdStrike, retrospective corruption, I think is completely fine and within his purview to do.
The answer is no, it's not okay for the president of the United States to break the law.
Past corruption with Biden,
it's not okay.
Hunter Biden,
That's
the past
all.
thing there. I don't think prospectively it's a good thing.
Can I make a really quick point about constitutional law? I want to clarify this and make sure the public gets it right. The president does not have an absolute executive immunity in impeachment investigations. He doesn't have an absolute executive privilege over all information that's produced in the administration, some of which may have nothing to do with him. But if this president succeeds on those arguments, he is above the law. He is above any other means for holding himself accountable. What's left is the election, and he was trying to game the election. That's the problem.
But is it not, is it not
trying to
true
game the
that
election.
Democrats have decided to not fight
Just
these
like a
fights
fucking
because they
football
think it will be
coach that fucking listens in on the other team's plays. It's illegal, and if you get caught doing it, you lose the fucking game. You know, and America doesn't like a fucking cheater, man. And Donald Trump is cheating. He's breaking the law to win the goddamn election. These guys, the guy explained it very, very directly just then. You know? God.
That Bill Taylor, the former ambassador and now the current top diplomat in Ukraine, announced today, it is SOT number 1, about what one of his aides overheard. Let's roll that sound.
Ambassador Sondland called President Trump and told him of his meetings in Kyiv. The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations.
See that?
Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward.
Donald Trump doesn't want to play this part of
Following
the
the call with
testimony to
President
you.
Trump, the member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, which Giuliani was pressing for.
There you go.
So that's a pretty big bombshell, considering that we did not know that. We had not
I
heard
heard that
We
on the radio when I
believe
was driving down
that
the
on
road.
Friday, that aide of Bill Taylor's
I was like,
is going to
like,
take questions behind closed doors at depositions. We're going to go down to the White House, where the president and the Turkish president are taking questions from reporters.
We'll keep them apprised, but some of them joined us. They happen to be here. Senator Jim Risch, thank you, Jim, very much. Ted Cruz, thank you very much. Lindsey Graham, Lindsey, thank you. And Rick Scott, thank you, Rick, very much.
Rick
Joni
Scott.
is here, Joni Ernst, someplace. These are people that want to see peace in the Middle East, and I thought it would be appropriate to have them come over. And they met with the president, and we had a lot of very frank discussion. And we're dealing with a very big subject, a complex subject. It's been going on for
He's so proud
centuries
of
in many
himself.
cases.
Complex
but
subject.
we're making a lot
Only
of
I'm good at
progress,
that.
tremendous progress in the Middle East. Okay, a couple of questions. Go ahead. OAN, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to just start out getting your general reaction today to the impeachment hearings on the Hill. Do you feel that Democrats made their case, and how did you feel about the Republican performance?
Are you talking about the witch hunt? Is that what you mean? Is that what you're talking about? I hear it's a joke. I haven't watched for 1 minute because I've been with the president, which is much more important as far as I'm concerned.
Good.
This is a sham,
Good for him.
and shouldn't be allowed. It was a situation that was caused.
I tell you what, Donald Trump keeps doing shit like this, and he's going to win that goddamn presidency. They better be careful, because this is exactly what he needs to do. He needs to president and not worry about the fucking impeachment bullshit.
It was much different than the fact. I want to find out why the IG, why would he have presented that when in fact all he had to do is check the call itself and he would have seen it. I'm going to be releasing, I think on Thursday, a second call, which actually was the first of the two, and you'll make a determination as to what you think there. But I've heard just a report. They said it's all third-hand information, nothing direct at all. It can't be direct because I never said it. And all they have to do is look very, very simply at the transcript. If you read the transcript, this was analyzed by great lawyers. This was analyzed by Greg Jarrett. It was analyzed by Mark Levin. It was analyzed by everybody. They said this statement that I made, the whole call that I made with the president of Ukraine, was a perfect one.
Oh, he said it again!
That this country gets put through that we have to waste this gentleman's time by even thinking about it,
It's
talking
so
about it. I'd much
perfect
rather
that
focus
there's
on
literally
peace in the
an
Middle East.
impeachment hearing over it right
And,
now.
I
That's
hear
how
that
perfect
it's,
that call was.
I hear that it's a hoax and it's being played as a hoax.
Such an idiot.
That's what I hear, but you'll have to tell me. Go ahead.
God, I hope he
May
gets
on
impeached.
Syria and peace
I
in the
hope
Middle
20
East,
Republicans say,
President
you know
Erdogan
what?
talked about
Fuck this
repatriating
motherfucker.
Syrian refugees back to their homeland. Have
20
you had those
Republicans,
discussions
man.
with European leaders, since there are so many Syrian
Well, no, I
refugees?
think that, frankly, Europe should be paying for this to a large extent. As of this moment, Turkey's been paying for most of it. I think the president was saying today they've spent over $40 billion on the cost of that. $40 billion. How much?
30
Oh.
billion.
40. That's what I said. Whatever. He spent a lot. Okay. They're throwing out all these different numbers. I heard it was $40 billion. How was that? 40 billion, correct? So $40 billion, and I've heard that number from others, and that's a lot. Europe has contributed about $3 billion, and a lot of these people would go all throughout Europe. I mean, it would be a devastating situation for Europe because he's got 4 million people. He has a lot of Kurds, too, that they're helping and taking care of. So I have spoken to Europe about it. I think they should help us with ISIS because many of them left France and they left Germany and they left UK. They left different countries. And these countries should help us because if they ever did get released, which we won't be doing, but if they ever did get released, that's where they want to go. They want to go back to France and Germany and UK and all of those other countries that are not helping us. I gave them the option, would you like to have them back? And intelligently they said, no, thank you. But that's not right and it's not fair. I can tell you also that Turkey captured when some escaped during the conflict, when they had the heavy shooting. And I mean, I think I know how they happened to escape, but it's one of those things. Doesn't matter because Turkey captured everybody that escaped plus an additional group. When we took over, when I became president, ISIS was rampant all over the Middle East. And as of about a month ago, I think, Lindsay, we can say that we have now 100% of the caliphate. They'll always try and grow, but they haven't been able to do that. And what we did last week with al-Baghdadi, who is the absolute founder, leader, set them back. We also got his number 2, and we have our sights on his number 3. So they're not going to be growing too fast. But I will say Turkey's been helping us a lot.
So with that, I also have a question for President Erdogan. With what you're calling a realignment along the northern Syria border, a lot of Christians in that region are feeling very vulnerable. Groups on the ground are saying that attacks on Christians have increased under this new policy and that they're not feeling safe any longer. Can you guarantee that the Turkish government will also protect Christians in that region? In fact, there was an attack on an Armenian priest who died, he and his father, this week. ISIS is claiming responsibility.
Çok teşekkür. Thank you. Thank you. On the contrary, Chaldani, Yazidi, and Christian minorities is an area where we're especially sensitive about, and we have certain different plans. Whether it be the ones remaining on the side of Syria, whose sanctuaries have been destroyed.
I'm going to get out of here, guys. I've got some stuff I got to go do. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you in for the 420 show, probably this afternoon. You guys, thanks for watching. No law regarding cannabis.
Praying there again. And
bye, guys.
These are the plans that we're making for them.